where it was put together and designed and manufactured was destroyed. And the same film has never been made available to the public. And I think it's because it was just so good that that they just wanted to keep that secret. They didn't really want anybody to know how they did it and what they did.
Well, as a matter of fact, right now up on our website, redicecreations.com, we have a reprinted article from Reuters revealing that the moon landing tapes got erased by NASA allegedly. Do you think that that's all a lie, or do you think that they're, that actually happened? They don't care about this stuff?
I do suspect that that they did just erase them. Again, going back to the Apollo 11 landing and the crappy black and white camera, I think that they deliberately put. In fact, we demonstrate in Dark Mission that they had a vastly superior color camera. But truthfully, even though I think they thought they were pretty much landing in the middle of nowhere for their little ritual, where there were no ruins around it, I think they were very, very concerned about what people might be able to see from the moon on TV. And so they pretty much deliberately put in a very, very low-grade black and white camera for the mission. And on top of that, we now know that the signal that actually was broadcast on television was dramatically lower resolution than what actually did come back to the receiving stations at Goldstone and in Australia and so forth. And what they've been looking for is those tapes, the actual higher quality tapes of the original slow scan TV signal, which was significantly better than what was actually ever broadcast on television. Now, personally, I don't really think there's anything on them. I don't think there's anything that we're going to see in terms of ruins in the background or anything like that. But I suspect that at some point that nobody really minded that they were ever erased, because I think it also was important for them, to make sure that people didn't realize that they could have broadcast a much better signal. They could have shown us much better versions, and they chose not to. Because on later missions, there were things, ruins in the background. There were things that we could have seen on television if the image quality had been higher. Right. And even later, as they did go to color cameras and did go to better cameras, they still used different processes to degrade the signal before it was ever broadcast on television to the world. So, it's a game. I suspect that exactly, that what they say happened probably did happen, that they were just, not taken care of very well and erased.
That is weird in a way. And also, what I think about is that would imply that they already knew that there was going to be something on the moon. Do you think that they had a recon mission there and actually discovered it way back before they even set foot on the moon, that there were structures or some kind of anomaly there?
Well, I have a friend out here in Los Angeles named Sean David Morton, who's a fairly well-known guy. He's done a lot of radio and television shows on paranormal and UFOs and so forth. And Sean, as he was growing up, his dad was a high executive at TRW, who was one of the major companies involved with going to the moon. And he had a lot of astronauts over to his house. They had a nice place in Palos Verdes, and a lot of the guys, Ed Mitchell and Gus Grissom. And Sean, as he was a little boy, he knew these guys. He grew up around these people. And he's told me on more than one occasion that Gus Grissom went on and on about how, scared he was and how angry he was, because he knew very well that NASA or the government had much, much better technology, that they'd been to the moon and been to Mars in the 1950s before they ever publicly went there, and knew everything that was there. And he was really frustrated because they got stuck with all of the low-tech, really crappy equipment, and, he was concerned for his safety. And ironically, of course, Gus ended up dying in a fire at a test on Apollo 1. So, even the astronauts believed that we had been to the moon before, believed that we had better technology. And I think the next book that Richard and I are talking about doing it's going to be called The Secret Space Program, and we're starting to really develop a lot of interesting evidence that there certainly was other technologies that could have been utilized in making essentially flying saucers to go to the moon, but all done very, very secretly. So, I think to answer your question, I think they knew beforehand what was there and what they expected to find. But I also think that it's possible that these ancient secret societies and some of their writings and things that were passed down over the years, they might have even known from those way before the World War II era or way before we had any technology. They may have known from ancient times.
Yes.
That there were ruins on the moon and ruins on Mars.
Really, really interesting. Do you think
they have been passed down over the centuries, over the millennia?
Yes, information lodged within the secret societies, and when they finally, so to speak, could have regained the technology that they were looking for, they made it to the moon eventually. And do you think that, and if there was an alternative technology used to reach the moon, would that give a little bit of credence to a lot of people who are criticizing the idea that we might not have gone to the moon with the technology that that they say that they went there with, if you know what I mean?
No, because we could get to the moon and back with the technology, the public technology that we've all seen. We could do it. Certainly, they did do it. I've gone through those arguments. We talk about them a little bit in Dark Mission, and honestly, none of the arguments hold up to my mind at all. I pretty much can shred any of them. It's really it's what's happening, I believe, is that people are seeing the secrecy around the space program and wondering why the secrecy is going on, and they're jumping to the wrong conclusion, which is that they were hiding the fact that we never really went there. It was all done in the studio, and that's the wrong conclusion. The reality is, yeah, there is secrecy, there is reason for you to be suspicious, but what you should be suspicious about is that we went there, but we didn't tell people really why we really went there, what we really found, and what we really brought back.
Well, that's an interesting point.
I mean, if you want to do a show on the moon conspiracy thing, just bring me the charges, and I can talk about any of them anytime.
That would be interesting, actually. Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I have a website called lunaranomalies.com, and I'm not sure. I may have to renew the internet, the domain name on that. But on that website, we have very extensive articles that Richard and I and another researcher named Steve Troy worked on about the moon missions. It's called Who Mourns for Apollo was the name of the series. And it's about a 4-part series where we kind of take apart all the arguments and show why they're wrong.
Interesting. LunarAnomalies.com for those who want to check out more on that then. Oh, very interesting.
That, again, I'm not positive it's still up. I have to renew the domain name on that and all.
Okay. How about the idea then that we haven't been back because there actually is or was then at that point a kind of an active, if I can use that word, active alien presence on the moon, that we were warned not to go back. What about that idea?
It's feasible. I've certainly heard the stories, as we all have. I've seen, the supposed quotes from Neil Armstrong, but I've never ever found them to have been verified in any way.
You were mentioning the potential active alien presence on the moon and some claims that from Neil Armstrong. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, Neil Armstrong is the one who supposedly is quoted as saying, there was these really big, impressive ships, and they were lined up on the rim of a crater, and they warned us not to go back. And I've heard these quotes, but I've never seen them substantiated anywhere. So, it would be one thing if he said that, and there was a tape, or there was 2 or 3 witnesses that could testify to it. But they're just right now they're just stories. And although I think you can use such anecdotal stories to support other evidence that you have, I don't think they stand as evidence on their own. So one of the things that's never made sense to me is why would they let us go there 6 times before they told us to stop coming back?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think if that really was the case, it's just as likely that what happened was that the public space program kind of tripped over the private space program that was already operating there, and maybe that did happen where they kind of were warned by the private space program to stop poking around and just stay home for a while. But I don't know. I can't put my finger on that. I can't really say that I can. I feel very confident that actually happened.
All right. So what we potentially are looking at here then, and if we talk about what primarily you and Richard have been focusing on is what is on the moon right now, and that seems to be that there's a lot of ruins, some kind of structures. Richard had talked about the crystal towers, something called the shard, and things like that. What does that imply? Where do you think all this comes from? Is that our own previous civilization that had a presence on the moon, or are we talking about ET here?
Well, the thing is, honestly, we don't know. We don't know. But our speculation and direction that we've been moving in for quite some time